Excuse me. Yeah, Madam Chair, if you remember, 2 meetings ago, I brought to you New England School Development Council proposal. We all knew it wasn't what we wanted, but that's what they sent me. So even before I presented that to you, I had conversations with their executive director, Dave DeBrucy, who I've known for many years. And I explained to him in detail, in writing, what we were looking for. This proposal is, number one, broader in concept, much more like what you asked me to get. And it's also expensive. So I find that humorously interesting. So this proposal is for a long-range enrollment look, and then a capacity analysis of the school, which is typically what they do. And then on the second page is an identification of options, which includes the grade organization, the accommodation of present proposed educational programs, any facility modification, closure, construction, blah, 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 which we know that we're not looking for any. And then, so what they plan to do is take the projected enrollment and then talk about the grade level organization for the future, which is really where you wanted to focus. I have been scouring the land and the globe for a research project that really identifies what is the best way to organize students in the intermediate grades, because that's what we're basically, we're not talking about primary, we're talking about either third grade through 7th grade or 4th grade through 8th grade. And I have not found any. Every time I call somebody, the answer I get is basically the same as I stated to you initially. Public school districts organize their programs, their grade levels, based on the space they have and the buildings they have. When it goes to build a new building, they typically grow the number of grades so that the maximum number of students can be in the new facility. But in terms of finding research anywhere that says a 4th through 8th grade combination of grade levels is better than a 6th through 8th grade, I have not found any. Now, in my pretty extensive experience, I have worked with almost all of them. And I have found that the statement that whatever the organizational structure of the school district is, you then tailor the education to match the structure. You, in my first superintendency in New York State, I had a primary school, pre-K through 2nd grade, and then 3rd through 12th was in one building. Now, they were separate entrances, separate programs, obviously, separate schedules, but they were in one building. Because we had this huge 1933 Civilian Conservation Corps built stone megapolis, gorgeous building. And it was utilized. And I called a couple of, I was here yesterday, I met with my first BOCES superintendent from New York State when I was principal, and I talked to Roy about it. He chuckled and said, "Oh, you know the answer. We got a building, you fill it." So, but this expenditure would give us a good look at the future in terms of numbers, projections, and then get an identification from their staff of options.
And that would include like looking at, they're gonna look longitudinally at sort of the percentage loss over time to the charter and private world. They made some predictions for the next 10 years.
Yep.
Okay.
When I was reading that, to me, it looked more like it was still kind of building focused,
Yeah.
and, I wasn't sure if that's what we were looking for.
Yeah. I would agree, Madam Chair, if I may.
I think that, where we're looking is to really like, look at the programming or the education and figuring. We, like you guys, figuring what the best model is to sustain healthy population in school regardless of that, right? So I'm not sure that this is something that I don't see it being coming at this point because we don't have the person.
That was my question too. Unless, and I think there have been like conversations in about which goes to different things. Unless there's something definitive there, where there's going to be a major change in use, it doesn't feel like we do facilities that it's actually, for me, I think what we've been faced with is almost, it's, you have a building and fill it, but what if you can't? Like, what if it's not done, right? And then what is the best scenario for the students, first and foremost? And then, the students in question, which is what we did this year, then the remaining students. And then how do we move the dollars? And I think if their enrollment study comes with if those are some of the recommendations, independent of any building, I would be a fan of signing on to that. I think that would be very useful. But I don't think you need the extra building cost. I also think Tony was very people that know more about buildings than you do. So I kind of feel like you've already got, e-building knowledge, you as we think about housing and educating kids, you already you're intimately there. And so, but the first part seems very valuable for us because we do have a big decision. It feels like a relief right now that we've got the 6th grade figured out, 5th grade for next year. But with the 5th grade potentially not changing, at least dramatically bigger, we do have another decision, and then you've got to think about, then there's 2. Is this an immediate thing or is this something that you want to say is better for the month? Such being just for today. Right? And we're gonna have to let them catch all in one way or another. And learning from the lessons of this year, we should probably start tackling earlier.
Yeah, we've already made an overture for someone to come in and talk to Kevin about the educational program that would be in place with more than one grade level in a classroom for certain subject areas. And I think I gave you the example of project-based learning.
Yep.
That did with 3 grade levels, New York State. So, we're already going down that path. I would totally agree with both of the comments by members of the committee. I projected out for you during the discussion about the current 6th grade, how many students we would have in our school district to 2032, moving up.
Yeah.
What I haven't done is give you what it looks like at the other end, but that's even easier. Because, what we do is, for example, every year we go with, when we send our preschool and kindergarten, put packets out, we get everybody that we have a live birth. And we utilize that number and the history that we already have to project how many students we're going to have. Now, what I can't do, because I just don't know how to do it, is give you the mathematical, regional, area probability of movements. But I can tell you it's not big here. And the reason is It's really socioeconomic. This is not the kind of community where a couple will marry, buy a home and grow into their home. I'm sure it happens, everything happens. But the more typical is what people build their economic strength and their foundation and then move into the district. Or the other one that happens is a family member owns a home here and they move in with a family. And there's just no way, how do you predict that?
You can, and they're absolutely right, but the average cost of a single family home costs That's fine.
And there's lots of communities like ours, you know, the W's. People, you know, if you have a time for a funny story, I can tell you, when I got my second job in education, I got a teaching position in Scarsdale, New York. Scarsdale, New York is, of course, 15 miles from Manhattan, extremely expensive. I went to Christy White, the realtor to the stars, was on her business card, and said, "Gee, I just got a teaching job. My wife and I would like to look for an apartment." And she looked at me and said, "Tony, you're looking in the wrong place. You can't afford an apartment in Scarsdale." And we did exactly what I just described to you. Built up our economic strength. And then we did live in Scarsdale for 2 years. Yeah. I don't think the new bylaw that was approved by the community is going to have any impact on school registration. Because that's short term.
Yeah.
That's my interpretation of it. The other thing about that bylaw is I'm sure it has to work its way through appeals from homeowners here.
You're talking about the short term.
Short-term rental bylaw that's new, that really wouldn't impact us at all.
Great. So we can go back to them and ask them, we can just do the study, unless somebody will go into stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and personally, I don't know that we're such a large community that we need. And, because I think that we do have good access to data, and I think that it's not predictable where we're going.
Yeah. Madam Chair, Kevin and I can spend some time this year getting the, from the clerk, town clerk, getting the libraries by year, age them up, see how they compare to our current. So, just using numbers off the top of my head. If there are 20 live births in the year that the students would be our kindergarten class in 2027, how does that compare to the last group of live births that were 20 with students who are old? Again, it's not a predictor. It's just a correlational study, which of course are the least reliable, but at least it'll give us something. And we can do that very quickly.
As long as it didn't take more like a lot of extra time, like the time, for me, like the money is spent well if for some reason we needed the expertise, which I hear is like, and then it would seem.
But we're much more excited about the educational.
Yeah,
Right, and that's where
I would also say that.
And I will keep looking for some research project, somebody. Hard to imagine nobody's done.
I'm wondering to just, because we are unique in our size, but there are others that have smaller towns that have, doesn't say they're talking about the post already, but I wonder if, some of the universities that have teaching programs have some research projects that are ongoing that we give some insight or have some unpublished work or.
Yeah,
Just.
the two that I know of that are almost exactly, the Truro and West Berkshires. Again, it's. They fill up their building. When they don't have room, they move up to the regional, Boston Regional or Berkshire Regional. It's not an educationally based movement.
Right. And I guess less of the movement, but more of what you were talking about with project-based learning, and like that type of,
Yeah,
and success, models that are sustaining for what we're facing.
Without a value judgment being interpreted by my next statement, and I really don't have a value judgment. The heyday of what you're asking for is long past. Because of standards-based education. This was really hot in late '60s to early '90s, alternative education, alternative high schools, project-based learning, education by design, all things I've used. But then in the mid '90s, the standard-based education, standardized testing came in, and it's just dwindled to the point where, in terms of public schools, it's a rarity to find anybody doing it.
At least locally, I wonder about the parts of the country that's happening. The other thing that's happening right now is it's a huge shift in focusing on workforce development skill areas, this particularly in high school, but workforce development, where it's happening in Massachusetts, where jobs are, colleges that are graduating people in jobs that are in those areas, those folks they operate. High schools are really fun. Kids learn those things, even if it means going to college and like on brilliant. Technical trainings, high school that are not both texts, right? And there are some there is some interesting stuff happening that does make me think of the whole project as learning, because it's allowing kids at different grades to access some of that and other factors that are not either grades. And then you're trying to sort of retrofit standards. Other big thing that's happening is competency certifications that the commissioner of Massachusetts is very interested in that. Something, I told you I read non-graded, none of my high schools have grades. So we operate outside of that system. It isn't on both, they are alternative high schools. Not what we're doing here. However, it is interesting to think of where they're not processed. So those two areas with those lenses, but it is different. Like I agree with you that everybody was talking about grouping and multi-grade classrooms and all of those types of things on purpose. It felt like when I was sort of coming up, like in the early 2000s, and the grads.
Yeah, in addition to the two that Zanderson mentioned, the third component that might regenerate some of this is the emotional social learning. Because project and education by design, teamwork, preparing for teams in the work field, course, is emotionally and socially more developmental than learning from a book, being able to cite, the more standards-based things. But it's fascinating. Every middle school and high school had home ec shop, right? I mean, we had hands-on learning and project-based learning. And then when computer technology came in, it took its place. And it's not anything like it. But we'll keep plugging along, and Kevin will have a meeting with the individual that was recommended. We'll see if that individual is interested in working with us and moving forward. Montessori, yes. Very different view. Multi-grade level is their byword. It's based on the theory of Pestalozzi. That chronological age is not intellectual age or emotional age. The private schools in New England typically are college organized like colleges, the high schools. There's not too many middle schools. It's much more. There are some, but it's much more frequent that you find a high pressure, high academic achievement private school. That's what New England's noted for. We have a significant percentage of our students in private education. There are areas of the country where it's basically unheard of, other than religious schools. Those tend to be organized either by grade level or by accelerated discipline. English first level. There might be multi-grade students in first level, but then they graduated to the second, the third, and typically end up in AP level courses, junior and senior. That's pretty typical.
Yeah.
But I'll keep looking.
Yeah, I wonder about, what kind of did about education, which is based on, so they have more elementary schools than, middle school. But now that we can see July, it could probably be 75.
Yeah, there's some urban charter schools that have been very successful with success-based movement rather than chronological movement.
That's competency based.
Yeah,
That's what we do. So students can, students have a set of competencies that they need to do to start to the next, like, pass. If they need to do it, they need to do it. And so we start, the schools are for marginalized kids who are thrown on track or not given the country on track. Learning another brand soft things like that. Why they might not be on track, or they just didn't do well in bigger skills. Right? So you could have a 17-year-old in the same math class as a coach. Right? And there was social things that you have to have. The smaller schools, pretty good. The small schools in lots of that. So, but like they're learning the same math classes, right? But then that 14-year-old might take a traditional 8th, 9th grade level math English class, and the 17-year-old might be in what we call math, right? Which is pre-cal, and they don't know, right? Or sorry, the writing accident. So it's really, so there are, and we're not the ones who thought that, but there are schools that do that. That would have to, we'd have to think about, that's different though, when you think about like, if we were ever gonna do a 4th, 5th combo here, right? It's a little different because in elementary school, the skill level, essentially in a town like this, the kids have been going through should be a little closer with some of the wild spread.
Right.
I would see from like 5 different school districts, kids that were behind carrying bags, right?
school districts with tremendous mobility or a high number of English language learners
Yes, yes.
tend to be more competency based, but it's always within yeah, a grid. It's never a 13-year-old with a 19-year-old. There's limitations to it. With all due respect, if a multi-grade 5th and 6th grade with 14 or 15 students in it created the kind of unhappiness that we saw this year, I would imagine that competency-based education would have a difficult time being accepted. I think the thing that is much more likely to happen is for our consultant and our principal to work with each grade level teacher on differentiation.
Yes.
So there is individualized learning like we do more in math in every subject. And then if that's happening, then it almost doesn't matter who's in the room
Right, exactly,
at time X.
right.
Now, again, just like every program, we wouldn't do it all the time.
And I think it's gonna be something, as you know, about some that went up about, so that in the event that there is some volatility, that we have resources, that we know, you know, and I think I don't think this town is the place where we would like have a different education. But I do think that we can borrow learning from these other models that have these things, you know, and create a system out of time, right? The benefit of time. That we can use to.
Because the goal is not just for the higher grade, it's, you know, to accommodate any small class size.
Exactly.
Any,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Which could happen, and then, you know. With this model already in place, it's not, you know.
Right. And you know, and in choice-based schools, even in the heyday, the type of program we're talking about may have been if you had a 3 or 4 house high school and middle school, one house may have been organized that way,
Right.
and parents have a choice.
Yeah.
Which kept the angst down.
Yeah.
The one thing I do want to remind members of the school committee is we're going to have 8 classrooms of students next year.
Yeah.
So that's more than we had when we had one in K through 6. So it's not a question of the building being underutilized.
Right.
It's a question of educational value and strength,
Yes,
you know, teaching the strengths.
Yeah.
So we'll work with that.
that's great, it's really good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we will.
No, I will communicate with Dr. DeRusi. And I will mention to him that 3 strikes and you're out. So he's got to, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The year-end activities we've spoken about and everyone has mentioned it. I just want, you know, there's a tendency in our world today, unfortunately. And I find myself falling prey to this tendency sometimes. To expect everything to be perfect. And then when it's not, complain about it. I don't know where that came from. I'll tell you, this community is much less than other places. I just want to make sure I say thank you to Kevin, to the entire staff, to all the parents who were involved with all of the end of the year activities, because our end of the year activities, I got in trouble with one person because it said, you know, this alone is enough to keep Johnson School thriving. And I meant it. The move up ceremonies, the field days, the way that children acted the last week or 2 weeks of school, everything was just so strong. And it just doesn't happen by accident. It happens much like a rowing scull because everybody's pulling together. And I simply wanted to take a short moment and take their valuable time and say, I just want to thank everybody. It was a great thing.
Reading to acknowledge because it always.
Yeah, the parent support is key too, because you don't have students pulling soap dispensers off the wall in the bathroom, and all these kind of crazy things. They don't talk about that not happening, but it didn't happen. And it was just wonderful. I mean, I think that a lot goes out to the families too, to, we're a team working together. I think that helps so much.
feel like a nice big, celebration for the past couple of weeks of school, and it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Very excited, yeah.
Okay, so now to the dreaded line budget transfers that I'm sure we're all excited about. Woo, let's do it.
So, Madam Chair, with your permission and the other members of the school committee, I'll read this quickly. Oh, you have copies of just the project. It's next to last page. Okay, so this year, as in typical every year, there are line budget transfers required because at the end of our fiscal year, we cannot have a line in deficit. Clearly, we can't have the bottom line in deficit either. But every line has to either be fully spent or have a surplus. So what this sheet of paper describes to you as a school committee, and that I will ask you to approve because you are the fiscally responsible body, is taking our budget line items, looking at what we think we're going to spend from now until the end of the year, which is June 30th, but we have until 2 weeks after that by Mass General Law. And to make sure that all of our line items are either in the black or fully spent. So you've seen this before, but the total has typically been 30, 40, 50,000. This year, the total is $167,706.15, which I recommend we move from line to line in order to fulfill our obligation to have all of our lines either in the black or fully spent. And Madam Chair, I will quickly read through them for the record. First one is from textbooks, regular account. And Madam Chair, do you want me to read the 11-digit numbers? Okay. So from textbooks, regular education, to transfer $10,319.62 to the maintenance of building services. From custodial supplies, to transfer $22,397.19 to maintenance of building service. From heating and gas, to transfer $4,283.19 to maintenance of building services. From teacher salaries, regular education, to transfer $71,806.33 to maintenance of building services. I want to stop. They are the line items that we spent for the HVAC and for the new system of communications. To transfer from school committee supplies, $2,846.52 to the superintendent's office salaries. To transfer from custodial supplies, $15,172.68 to the superintendent's office salaries. To transfer from the aides' salaries for regular education, $8,655.38 to the principal office salaries. To transfer from health supplies, $249.31 to health salaries. To transfer from special education teacher salaries, $2,065 to the substitute line. To transfer from textbooks, regular education, $9,654.51 to teaching supplies, regular education. To transfer from hardware, $3,065.85 to software. To transfer from student body activity salaries to $195.75 to student body activities supplies. To transfer from occupational therapy salary $1,364.93 to speech salaries. To transfer from custodial supplies $9,261.40 to custodial salaries. To transfer from custodial supplies $1,618.49 to maintenance of equipment. And to transfer from evaluations $4,750 to special education tuition collaborative. For a grand total of line item transfers of $167,706.15.
Second motion made by Ms.
All in favor? Aye.
And Madam Chair, depending upon what happens in the next 2 weeks before the end of the fiscal year, we will have fewer, but an additional number of transfers. The other thing that I want to mention publicly is sometimes I know we don't get a bill in time. So for example, if one of our out of district special education schools is delinquent in their timeliness of sending a bill, then I would ask the town finance director to encumber that. And that can be a long process. For example, the check that we are still waiting to send for our alarm system was encumbered 2022 funds. So, and we still haven't spent it. At some point, the fiscal agent, the fiscal director of the town is going to say, "Don't you get it?" I gotta close that book. And that's typically dependent upon the audit takes place. Once the audit is scheduled, the book's closed. By the way, they were supposed to be here today to finish up, and they didn't show up. So. Yeah, it's $12,000. $12,000, yeah. It's not a small amount of money.
Moving on to other. Salary. We have the Nahant School Committee. Shall I?
Madam Chair, I would suggest that that would be the most appropriate thing to do. And then the recording secretary can put it in, attach it in. So it shows there's only really 2 numbers. So it's not like the last one.
So, Article 1 employment is the third extension of the contract of employment agreement between the school committee of the committee and Anthony County superintendent, signed and sealed on June 28th, 2022. It extends the agreement, which shall now expire on June 30th of the year 2025. This agreement amends the contract signed and sealed on April 2nd. According to Article 2. This third extension of the agreement replaces and makes void. First extension of the agreement was signed and sealed on June 13th, 2017. And the second extension of the agreement that was signed and sealed on September 11th, 2018, except for the amended article, early termination. And that's on it. Bonus, a one-time bonus of $1,500 payable in fiscal year 24 was renewed. This is approved on June 13th, 2023, and it is confirmed today at a public school meeting that is held on June 20th, 2023. This bonus does not increase the base salary. Article 2 base salary, the committee shall pay the superintendent the base annual salary of $65,112 for fiscal year 24. That is the period July 1
All other provisions of the second contract extension that was executed on September 11th of 2018 shall be in effect. So this agreement and all changes and extensions, and the other terms and conditions as stated in the original contract and Article 8 amended by agreement on September 11th, 2018 are in effect throughout the employment of the superintendent unless we specifically amend them. And in this way.
Madam Chair, if I may, 2 points. One is I'd like to explain one, Article 8 early termination provision. When I originally signed my contract in 2016, the original contract offered by the town and the school committee only required me to give you a 2 months notice. I didn't feel that that was enough. So I voluntarily suggested strongly to the school committee at that time, 2018, that number be expanded to 4 months. Yeah, I mean, the school district, the superintendent leaves 8 weeks later. Wow, that's tough. Not that in today's world, it's not up to 16 weeks, but it's better. And then, Madam Chair, I would respectfully recommend that you ask for a motion and a vote. Those numbers.
To approve with the, and state the numbers. Motion to approve the, salary agreement between the Nahant School Committee and the Superintendent of Schools. With, one-time bonus of $200 payable in FY 2024. And a base salary of $65,112 for FY 2024, starting June 1st, 2023. And we authorize the chair to sign this on.
I apologize for the second.
I'll second them. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you all very much. You're a wonderful school committee. The community is blessed.
We're lucky to have you joining all of this experience. It's only in this industry we would. We're talking about these numbers and this experience. So we are really looking at this. And this has been a challenging year in years, and it feels good to be able to support, especially with this. Feels so we're all. I wasn't here last week, so I'm saying we're all.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any? Have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting to enter into executive session to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations regarding personnel or to conduct a collective bargaining session for contract negotiations upon personnel.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Oh. Let's see here. Well, Leanna is the only one on. So, what's that? Yeah, you know what? So there is a waiting room. And
Seven oh four. I remember a number, but not
the band. the
Oh,
band's
yeah.
participation in the, and he was the. What's the formal name for the person who leads the parade?
The.
Marshall.
Marshall, thank you. You do want me to stop the recording there, right?
Oh,
Yeah, that part's yes.
I think we can start anyway.